You know, Africa has one of the highest growth markets in the world, and mainly it's driven because if you follow some of the reports, they have one of the highest migration of urbanizations in the world. So there's more and more people are moving into the cities in Africa. In fact, at a double digits compared to the rest of the world. And they have one of the most youthful population in the world, which they very easily adopted the new technologies and the new way how the world communicate.
How much is demand for access to the internet, whether it be using a mobile phone, a smartphone, growing in Africa?
The access in Africa remains a challenge, particularly if you look at the continent as a whole. There's about, I think, 53 countries, if I'm not mistaken. There is yet to be built a network that crosses the Pan-Am Africa. So we have submarine cables surrounding the continent, providing access to the digital world, but yet to have a Pan-Am African network. But it's coming, and we see an opportunity in that. And if you look at companies like Google and Facebook, they see the next billion users in Africa. So eventually the infrastructure will come.
A simple question, but also complex, I suppose, too. Which is the way forward for development of the internet, creating better access to the World Wide Web in Africa? Is it more cabling, or is it provision of more satellites in orbit?
I think it will require more and more capacity. You know, those submarine cables networks around the world, they power, I think worldwide, about a 15 to 16 trillion economy, digital economy. And Africa obviously is a big part of it as well. So in the future, yes. And you know, they have a lifetime experience, so they need to be rebuilt at some point.
I wonder what you make of this increasing trend, which is almost unique to Africa. Telecom companies sharing the masts or the broadcast towers. It doesn't go on so much elsewhere in the world, and it's hard to argue against the fact it does cut down on costs.
It's a great question, Russell. As mobile operators, or the operators itself, they were used to this strategy of building an infrastructure and creating a barrier for competition not to come in. And collaboration has not been their biggest strength. But I think now more than ever, as they have increased competition from the over-the-tops and also increased competition in country where the ARPUs are going down, collaboration with each other, it's of a strategic importance. So we see that more and more, where the operators will share a distribution network, they will share towers, they potentially share other marketing driven activities to be able to streamline and modernize their operations to be more nimble and competitive in the market.
When it comes to the internet, it's nice to talk about technology, it's nice to talk about the business of the telecom companies, but ordinary consumers, what they care about is the cost of the calls or the cost of downloading data over the internet. Is it going to remain cheaper in Africa than other parts of the world, whether it's Europe or North America?
It's new entrants, or we call them over-the-tops, which are not equal competitors to the mobile operators or to the fixed operators. They've put a significant pressure. If you look at today, a third of the traffic of the voice calls are handled by Skype in the world. And 80% of the messaging goes through WhatsApp, Viber, iMessages, et cetera, et cetera. So unless I wrongfully will calculate the regulatory, because you know there's some regulatory challenges in the different segments. I think it will remain at a low prices. It will go down. It's not going away, but it's fundamentally changing. And I think Africa is no exception to that. Even though some segments, depends on the regulatory, could react, but I think it will go down. Yes.
There's an old expression, I suppose it comes from the movies: if you build it, they will come. And I use that in connection with thinking about the development of e-commerce business in Africa. If there's an entrepreneur who's worried about the broadband infrastructure, the internet infrastructure, they might worry that's going to hold up their business. If you just carry on with your business and don't worry about the mobile broadband infrastructure, will the telecom companies play catch up? Because if your business is successful, demand will be there.
Absolutely. You know, Africa, if you look at the smartphone penetration, it's still low. Still around, I think, 15%. So if you look at the growth potential in the smartphone growth, that means your future data users. And with the youth population being a quick adopters to these technologies, And I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm a little bit irrational and optimistic by nature. So I believe yes. You should build an infrastructure. And I think it's time for the operators in Africa and around the world to become customer obsessed. Just like the Amazons of the world and the Apples of the world, which they have this obsession with customers and having that relationship with the customers. If you build it and you are customer obsessed, they'll be there, they'll embrace you. And there is a huge opportunity for the African operators to capture value on this potential growth.